Welcome to the Makerspace, Tigers. Now that we are down here, we are going to explore those units of measurement that I mentioned upstairs in the classroom. Now, when we're talking about measurement, it's a little wonky because there's actually two systems of measurement that we use to measure the same things. So if I asked you to measure the length of your arm, you could measure that in feet or inches, or you could maybe measure that in meters or centimeters. And those are the two different units of measurement that we're going to learn about. On one hand, we have the customary unit of measurement. Now, customary is what you're most used to probably. You hear this a lot, especially like in the kitchen when your parents are cooking. Pounds, ounces, feet, inches, miles. The customary unit of measurement is used mostly in the United States, so that's why we hear it the most. Now, the other option is the metric system of measurement. Now, the metric system of measurement is used over in England, London, the UK, and basically everywhere else that isn't the United States. It's a little weird that we're the special ones there, but it is also used by scientists, even in the United States. So if you're looking to get into science, you want to be a doctor, you want to just do well in your future science classes, it's important to understand the metric system of measurement. Now, what we're going to do right now, since we're in the maker's space, is we're going to look at some real-life examples of the relative sizes of our units of measurement. What that means is we're going to look at the different things that maybe we can relate our units of measurement to when we're trying to remember, how big is an inch or how big is a foot? Because there will be questions that you will be asked, such as, what would you use to measure an elephant? And we need to know, would we use inches? Or would we use pounds if they want to know the height of the elephant? Or would we use centimeters? Well, if I know my relative sizes, I know that centimeters are really tiny, so I don't want to measure a whole elephant in centimeters. Inches, still a little bit tiny, so it wouldn't work so well. Pounds, that's going to measure the weight of my elephant, not the height. So my best bet is going to be something like feet or yards or meters, something that measures a larger distance but can help me measure the length of that elephant. So that's just an example of why we need to understand the relative sizes of our measurements. Now let's get into what those sizes look like. First thing we're going to do is look at our customary units of measurement. And the first type of measurement that we can explore with customary measure is length. Now, measuring length is measuring the distance between 2 points, point A and point B. We can measure, let's say, the length of my television or the height of Miss Nicholas. There's a lot of different length measurements that you can use. It's the flat point from A to B. So the smallest unit of length in our customary measurements is an inch. And the best way to remember the size of an inch is to think of a paper clip. Now this paper clip is about an inch. If I don't have a paper clip around and I forget, what was that desk supply that helps me remember an inch? I can think of a pinch. It's nice and rhyming. An inch is about the size of a pinch. Now the next measurement that we have in our customary units of measurement is a foot. It's a little bit bigger than an inch. It's actually the size of 12 inches, and it is the length of a regular ruler. Now, a ruler is 1 foot in length, which means it is 12 inches in length. It is this size. Now, a foot is also about the size of a floor tile. So if you look at the floor of the school or at the carpet in our classroom, this is about the size of a foot. Now, the last way I remember it, if I don't have any of those items around and I'm on a test and I'm blanking, a foot is about the size of my shoulder width. So this is the size of a foot if I can't remember. The next unit of measure that we're going to talk about in customary measure is a little bit bigger. This is a yard. A yard is actually 3 feet put together. So this is a yardstick. It is 3 feet long. It represents 1 yard. Now, the other way I like to remember a yard is about the size of a baseball bat. Now, this is a smaller baseball bat. A yard would be a little bit bigger than this. But if I'm really blanking on a test and I want to remember, is a yard a tiny measurement or a big one? Think of your baseball bat. The last way I remember my yards is to think of a T-Rex hug. Now this one's a little bit silly, but it works. Now a T-Rex can't straighten its arms fully, has short little arms. So a yard is about the size of a T-Rex trying to hug you, giving you a big hug. That's my trick for a yard. Now those are my measurements of length that can be measured with items that are around the house. The last measurement of length in my customary units is a mile. A mile is 5,280 feet. That's 5,280 of these. So that's pretty big. I couldn't fit that in the classroom or in the makerspace. So you're just gonna have to picture that with me. But a mile is used to measure really long distances and really far amounts. Those are my measurements for length. Now we're going to jump over to the customary measurements for weight. Weight can be used by measuring, or can be measured with a scale. It can look like that, kind of like the kind your parents step on in the bathroom, or a scale that kind of tilts like you'll see in science. When we're talking about weight, there's a couple of different measurements in our customary system that we want to be familiar with. The first one is our smallest one. It is an ounce. Now an ounce weighs about the amount of a piece of bread. So next time you're making a sandwich, pick up a piece of bread, and this is about how much an ounce is. Now, a little bit bigger than an ounce is a pound. A pound is about a small jar of peanut butter. A pound is also about the weight of a can of vegetables. So if you have a can of vegetables, you want to pick up and feel that, that's a pound. Or a pineapple. If you want to go grab a pineapple at the grocery store, pick it up, don't drop it, and feel that, that's about a pound. Now, the next biggest measurement that we want to talk about when we're talking about weight and customary units is probably our biggest one ever, in customary at least, and it's a ton. A ton is 2,000 pounds. It's a lot. And it's about the size of a car, or the weight of a car, I should say. Now, not this car. This car is less than an ounce, but if I were to measure the weight of a real car, it would be about a ton. It's a lot. I am not going to be able to lift a ton no matter how much I work out. Maybe Superman, but not us. So those are my customary weights. The last measurements we're going to talk about are our capacity measurements. Now when we're measuring capacity, that's how much liquid or solid can fit inside of an item. So for example, how much soda can I fit in this bottle? A little less now. So when we're talking about our capacity, the smallest capacity that we're going to want to remember when it comes to our customary units is a fluid ounce. Now you might remember we talked about ounce when we said weight, and it's about the weight of a piece of bread. But a fluid ounce measures how much if we're pouring something or measuring something to cook. So a fluid ounce is about the size of a measuring spoon. I don't know if you can see it. There you go. There's my spoon. This is about the size of a fluid ounce. So if I filled this up with, like, let's say cough syrup, and were to drink that, that's about a fluid ounce. Now, after a fluid ounce comes a cup. A cup is a little bit bigger. This is my cup measuring cup that I use to measure out when I'm cooking my ingredients. So a cup is about this big, if you can see. Maybe a fistful, maybe 2 fists if you have tiny fists like me. After a cup comes a pint. A pint is a little bit bigger. A pint is about a small bottle of milk like you see here. So this is a pint. A little bit bigger than a pint is a quart. So you might have seen these sandwich baggies. These are a quart-sized sandwich bag. If I filled this up with something like sand or marbles, I would have a quart of those items. So it's a little bit bigger than a pint, but not quite as big as our biggest unit of measure for capacity, which is a gallon. Now a gallon is this size. Your regular old milk jug, this was a sweet tea jug, this is a gallon, pretty big. If you are lifting weights, this is a pretty heavy weight to lift, but this is your gallon size. Those are my measurements for my customary system. But now let's look at how those will compare to our metric system. So we're going to go back to length and go over the length, weight, and capacity for the metric system. So starting with length, again, that's the distance between 2 points or how long or tall something is. The smallest unit of measure for length is a millimeter. Now the way I like to remember a millimeter and how big that is, it's really tiny. It's about the size of the width or the height of a coin. So right here I have a quarter. If you look at a quarter or a nickel or a dime or a penny, look at how big that is in terms of height. If you were to hold it up like this or put it on a table, tiny. That is a millimeter. A millimeter is also the width of a credit card. So if your parents know, don't take it without them knowing, look at their credit card or your ID card or something. It is the width of a millimeter, super tiny. I would not want to measure an elephant in millimeters. That's going to take a ton of millimeters. After a millimeter comes a centimeter. Now a centimeter you'll find on a common ruler. It's smaller than an inch. It is about the width of your pinky. So if you hold your pinky up and look at how wide it is, that is a centimeter. After a centimeter comes a meter. Now a meter is a bit bigger than your regular old yard. Remember our yard was 3 feet. It was about this big. A meter is bigger than this. A meter is a little bit bigger than the width of a door. I'd say it's probably about the full arm length. If you were to stretch out your arms fully, all the way, not our T-Rex hug, but big arms, nice and wide, that's the length of a meter. So those are my main measurements for when I'm talking about my length in terms of the metric system. Now, one last measurement you're going to hear when we talk about length is kilometer. Now, the common word you hear there is meter. And remember, a meter is your arm's width. Well, a kilometer is 1,000 of those meters. So if I had to compare a kilometer to anything in the customary system, the US system, I'd say it's kind of like a mile. It's a really, really long distance. That's my metric system for length. Next, we're going to jump into our metric system for weight, how much something weighs. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our tiniest one, and that is a milligram. Now, if I'm talking about a milligram in terms of weight, that's about one little tiny grain of salt. So if you take a salt and take one tiny, tiny piece of it, that's the weight of a milligram. Super tiny. And you know it's good luck to throw salt over your left shoulder. I hope it's left and not right. So that's the smallest measurement of weight, a milligram. Super tiny. You're going to want to measure small things with it. The next size is a gram. A gram is a bit bigger. It is about the size of a pack of sugar. So when you go to get coffee or something with your parents, take a look at a pack of sugar. This is about the size of a gram. Next up is a kilogram. A kilogram is 1,000 of these little grams. That adds up pretty quickly to be about the size of 6 heavy apples. It's pretty heavy, but not super heavy. It can be lifted. Those are my main measurements for the weight of the metric system measurements. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is our metric system units of capacity. How much an item can hold. When we're talking about our smallest measurement in the metric system, that is a milliliter. A milliliter is about 10 eye drops. So if you take a little eyedropper and you drop it, bing, 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 and take little drops or little raindrops, about 10 of those is a milliliter. So it's a very tiny amount of liquid. It's not very much. You're not going to want to measure a swimming pool in milliliters. That would take forever and be a ton of milliliters. After milliliter, we have a bigger unit of measurement when it comes to capacity. That is a liter. Now, a liter is about 2 water bottles. This is about 500 milliliters. A liter would be 1,000 milliliters. So it's going to be about 2 of these water bottles. That's 1 liter of liquid. And the last unit of measurement that we're going to talk about in our metric system is a kiloliter. Now, a kiloliter is super big. Picture 4 bathtubs full of water. That is your kiloliter. So that's just a little preview of the units of measurement that we need to know this year. Now, in addition to these, we're going to have to talk about time, because minutes, hours, seconds, days, weeks, months, those are important for us to know as well. That will also be something we'll be testing on. But for now, I really want you to go back, rewatch this, and try to remember all the different measurements and what they relate to. I want you to be able to tell me, okay, if I'm trying to measure the height of a tree, would I use inches, feet, yards, or pounds? So review the things we just talked about, and I'm going to leave you with a couple notes that I want you to copy down in your math notebook. You should have brought it home with you over Christmas break. So I'm going to hold up some signs. Go ahead and copy these down. If you need to, pause the computer so you have plenty of time, and then we're going to go from there. So the first one I want you to copy down, length. Copy down all of these units of measure. On your mark, get set, pause your video so you can copy this down. Now the next one we're going to do is weight. Go ahead and get ready to pause, and I want you to copy down all of your units of weight. Up next, we have capacity. Ready? On your mark, get set, pause. Okay, and the last one is time. So on your mark, get set, pause your video, and copy down time. All right, those are important notes for you to review and practice and make sure that you know by the time you come back to school on Monday. Tuesday. Don't come back on Monday. We start school on Tuesday after winter break. Now that we've reviewed our relative sizes of measurement, I'm going to show you how to use those. So we're going to jump back up to the classroom and go over a couple practice problems and what we're going to do next. See you upstairs. All right, so now that we have learned what types of measurements we'll be working with and their relative sizes. So we know when we say an inch, we're not talking about something this big, we're talking about something that's about the size of a pinch. Well, now that we understand that, we are going to talk about how we're going to be using that in our 4th grade math class this year. When we are measuring items, sometimes we'll measure it in inches or feet, but the problem we're trying to solve might need that measurement in a different unit size. So for example, if I tell you Miss Nick is 5 feet tall and I want to know how many inches tall I am, we have to know how to convert that. So we are going to be learning how to convert our measurements. Now the word convert just means we are changing it up, the same way we converted our mixed numbers and our improper fractions. But this time we are converting our units of measurement. So we're going from inches to feet, yards to miles, kilograms to grams, and we're going to use the same process every time we do that. That process looks like this. So you're copying this down in your notebooks. If we're going from a big unit, for example, let's say we're going from feet. That's a bigger unit than inches. So if we're going from a big unit like feet to a small unit like inches. So if Miss Nick is 5 feet tall, how many inches is that? Well, that's when we multiply to find our answer. But if we're going from a small unit like inches to a big unit like feet, we have to divide. In this unit, we are going to be focusing on our big to small conversions. So we're really only going to worry about multiplying, but it's important to understand why we're doing that. So let's take that example we've been using and do the problem and work it out. So let's say Miss Nick is 5 feet tall. 5 feet equals how many inches? When we're solving a problem like that, we first look to our measurements. Well, we know we're going from feet to inches, and that's from big to small, so we're going to multiply. Once we've identified that we are multiplying, we have to know what our conversion rate is, how many inches are in 1 foot. Now on the FSA, you will have a reference sheet that will help you remember this, but it's good to know it just because it'll help you work through your problems faster and make sure you're not making any mistakes. So since I've had a lot of practice, I know that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. And that's what I'm going to use to solve my problem. Since 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, that's what I'm going to be multiplying. So I have 5 feet that I am working with, and I want to know how many inches that is. So I'm going to do 5 times the number of inches in 1 foot. 5 times 12. and that's going to give me my answer. Now maybe I don't know how to do this off the top of my head. I'm going to use my standard method to work it out. So 12 times 5, I'm going to multiply 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1, 1 times 5 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So Miss Nick, if she's 5 feet tall, she is 60 inches tall. That's how we are going to be converting our units of measurement. So I want you to use this example, copy it down, and make sure you understand exactly what we're doing here, because next we are going to do another example that you're going to try on your own before I show you how to do it. Ready? Go. Alright, so now that you've reviewed what we just did, let's use those tricks and strategies to help us practice a couple examples. Now the first thing I want you to always do when you are solving a conversion problem like this is write down your reminder of how we're going to solve it. So I wrote down at the top of my page, if I'm going from a big unit to a small unit, I'm going to multiply. If I'm going from a small unit to a big unit, I'm going to divide. Now, we're going to use that to solve our next problem. Let's say that Ollie can run in 10 seconds 3 yards. If he runs 3 yards in 10 seconds, first of all, he's super slow, but we'll talk about that later. I want to know how many feet that is. Now, why would I want to know how many feet that is? Well, let's say I'm explaining this to someone who doesn't know how long a yard is. And I'm like, hey, Ollie ran 3 yards. And they're like, I don't know how far that is. But I know feet. Can you tell me how many feet he ran? I've got to know how to convert that. So, the first thing I do is look at my chart. Yards are bigger than feet. So I'm going from a big unit to a small unit. Then I'm going to look at my reference sheet, my FSA reference sheet, and I'm going to see how many feet are in a yard, since this is the bigger unit. Once I look at my reference sheet, I see, 3 feet are in 1 yard. So that's my conversion rate. To solve my problem, I am going to do the number of yards that I'm working with, so 3 yards, and to figure out how many feet that is, I'm going to multiply that by how many feet I have, or how many feet are in each yard. So I'm going to do 3 times 3. Now this one is kind of easy. It's my single digits. 3 times 3, that gives me 9. So if Ollie ran 3 yards in 10 seconds, he ran 9 feet. That's super slow. He would be crawling, but we just converted from yards to feet. So let's do another one. This time, let's talk about our inches and our feet. That's going to be another easier conversion to multiply. So if I am asking, Coach Brooks, he could jump 5, All right, so now that you've looked over the one we just did, let's do another example. This time, let's go from our feet to our inches. So our problem is, if Coach Brooks can jump 3 feet in the air, so Coach Brooks is jumping 3 feet in the air. Here's Coach Brooks, jumping up high, jumping 3 feet in the air. He's got ups. How many inches is he jumping? How many inches high can he jump? So to solve that, I need to first look at my conversions, and I'm going to see, okay, feet are bigger than inches. These are my 2 units. Feet are bigger than inches, so I'm going from big to small. I'm going to have to multiply. Now that I have checked to see if I'm going to be multiplying, I'm going to figure out what numbers I'm multiplying. This is where I'm going to look at my conversion rate. I'm going to check out my reference sheet, look back at my FSA reference sheet, and I'll see that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So that's the number I'm going to use to be multiplying. And I'm going to multiply the number of feet I'm converting by the number of inches in 1 foot. So to figure out how many inches are in 3 feet, I'm going to multiply 12 inches times 3 feet. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. So I can confirm that 3 feet equals 36 inches. Not too bad, right? Well, now it's your turn. I'm going to give you a couple of problems to try on your own. You're going to do these on your own paper, bring them in to me, show them off after Christmas break so I can see how you're doing. And then after a few minutes, I want you to press play to check your work. So let me repeat that. I'm going to put up a couple questions on the board. I want you to press pause and work through them. Then, after you've solved them, I want you to press play and see if you got them right. All right, good luck. Well, here are your answers, Tigers. Check your work. Do me a favor, keep practicing. Review these videos. Go back, pause, rewind, watch it again. Take notes. Make up your own examples. Ask your parents to give you examples. Message me on Dojo. Ask me for examples. There are lots of ways that you can master this before we even get back from break. And I promise you, the harder you work at mastering this before we come back, the more fun we get to have when we're back in class together. So please, good luck, work hard. I can't wait to see how well you do. Finish checking your answers. I'll leave this up for a couple of seconds. But I cannot wait to see you when we are back on Tuesday. Have a great break. And those of you coming to winter break camp, I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.